Your bank account hits $23 on a Thursday afternoon. Payday isn't until Friday. You need gas to get to work tomorrow, so you fill up your tank for $35. And just like that, your account is overdrawn. The bank hits you with a $35 overdraft fee. So now you're not $12 in the hole, you're $47 in the hole. And when your paycheck finally hits on Friday, a huge chunk of it immediately disappears just to get you back to zero. You didn't buy anything crazy. You didn't go on a shopping spree. You just needed gas to get to work. But somehow, being broke just cost you an extra $35. My name is Todd, and I spend way too much time thinking about why being poor is exponentially more expensive than being comfortable. If you're someone who's ever felt like you're working harder than everyone around you but somehow ending up with less money, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up because we need to talk about the poverty tax, and it's way worse than you think. Here's the thing. We talk about poverty like it's just about not having enough money. Like if you're broke, you just have less stuff, less savings, less security. But that's not actually how it works. Being broke doesn't just mean you have less. It means everything costs more. And I'm not talking about inflation or the cost of living. I'm talking about a very specific, very real phenomenon where the exact same goods and services cost poor people significantly more money than they cost middle-class or wealthy people. It's called the poverty premium, and it's one of the most brutal, invisible wealth transfers happening in America right now. Now look, I know that sounds dramatic. It sounds like I'm exaggerating for clicks. But stay with me because the math here is absolutely wild. A study from the Brookings Institution found that low-income Americans pay about 10% more for everyday goods and services compared to middle-income Americans. 10%. That might not sound like much, but when you're living on $25,000 or $30,000 a year, an extra 10% is $2,000 to $3,000. That's an entire month's rent for some people. That's groceries for months. And it's money that's just evaporating because you're poor. But here's where it gets interesting. It's not just about paying more for the same stuff. It's about all the ways that not having money forces you into situations that cost you even more money. Let me give you an example. Let's say you need to get to work. If you're middle class, you probably own a car. Maybe you're making payments on it, but you own it. You pay for gas, insurance, maybe some maintenance here and there. But if you're broke, you might not be able to afford a car. So what do? You take public transportation. And in most American cities, public transportation is terrible. It takes twice as long, it's unreliable, and it costs money every single day. Or maybe you use Uber or Lyft when you're in a pinch, and now you're spending $15, $20 on a ride that would have cost you $3 in gas. Or here's another one. Let's talk about banking. If you're middle class, you probably have a checking account with a decent bank. Maybe you pay a small monthly fee. Maybe it's free if you keep a minimum balance. But if you're broke, you might not be able to keep that minimum balance. So the bank charges you a monthly maintenance fee. $10, $12, $15 a month just for the privilege of having a bank account. And if you can't afford that, or if you've had too many overdraft fees and the bank closed your account, now you're unbanked. You're cashing your paychecks at check cashing places that take 3 to 5% right off the top. You're paying bills with money orders that cost $1.50 each. You're using prepaid debit cards that charge you fees just to check your balance. Here's what most people don't realize. There's an entire ecosystem of businesses that exist specifically to extract money from people who don't have money. Payday lenders, rent-to-own furniture stores, title loan companies, buy here, pay here car lots. And they all have one thing in common. They charge interest rates and fees that would be illegal if they weren't specifically targeting poor people. A payday loan can have an annual percentage rate of 300, 400, even 500%. Let that sink in. You borrow $300 to cover an emergency, and 2 weeks later you owe $345. You can't pay it back, so you roll it over. Now you owe even more. And suddenly that $300 emergency has cost you $600, $800, $1,000 over the course of a few months. And this is where the psychology gets really dark. These businesses aren't stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They're betting on the fact that when you're broke and you need money right now, You're not thinking about the APR or the total cost. You're thinking about keeping the lights on. You're thinking about feeding your kids. You're thinking about not getting evicted. So you take the deal, even though you know it's terrible, because what choice do you have? Now you might be thinking, okay, Todd, but that's just people making bad financial decisions. If they were smarter with money, they wouldn't need payday loans. And I get why people think that. But here's the thing that drives me crazy. That argument assumes that poor people have the same choices as everyone else and they're just choosing wrong. But that's not reality. When you're broke, you don't have the luxury of making optimal financial decisions. You're making the least bad decision from a menu of terrible options. Let me tell you a story. I know someone who needed new tires for their car. Middle-class person in that situation. They go to Costco or Discount Tire, they pay $250, they're done. They might even put it on a credit card with 0% interest for 12 months. But this person didn't have $250 and didn't have a credit card. So what did they do? They went to a rent-to-own place. Ended up paying $18 a week for those tires. Sounds reasonable, right? Except $18 a week for a year is $936. For $250 worth of tires. They paid almost 4 times more for the exact same product because they didn't have the cash up front. And this happens everywhere. Buying groceries in bulk is cheaper per unit, but you need money up front to buy in bulk. Energy-efficient appliances save money on your electric bill, but they cost more initially. A better apartment in a safer neighborhood might actually be cheaper in the long run because you're not constantly dealing with break-ins or repairs, but you need first month, last month, and a security deposit to move in. Being broke means you're constantly stuck in these situations where you know the smart financial move, but you can't afford to make it. Here's another way to think about it. Poor people are paying interest on everything. Not literal interest like a loan, but an invisible tax that comes from not having capital. You can't afford to buy the 12-pack of toilet paper, so you buy the single roll that costs twice as much per sheet. You can't afford the annual car insurance payment that would save you 15%, so you pay monthly and end up spending more. You can't afford to go to the dentist for a cleaning, so you end up with a cavity that costs 10 times more to fix later. Every single one of these decisions makes perfect sense in the moment, but they all add up to a massive wealth transfer from the people who can least afford it. And here's what makes this even worse. All of these extra costs make it exponentially harder to stop being broke. Let's say you're making $30,000 a year, and between overdraft fees, payday loans, check cashing fees, higher prices for everyday goods, and all the other poverty premiums, you're losing $3,000 a year. That's $3,000 that could have gone into an emergency fund. That could have gone into your car repair fund so you don't need a title loan next time something breaks. That could have gone into a security deposit for a better apartment. But instead, it's gone. And without that buffer, you're stuck in the same cycle, paying the same premiums, losing more money, going nowhere. The National Consumer Law Center did a study and found that the average low-income household spends about $2,000 per year just on fees and interest from alternative financial services. $2,000. That's not counting the poverty premium on goods and services. That's just the direct extraction from payday lenders, check cashiers, and predatory financial products. For someone making $25,000 a year, that's 8% of their entire income just evaporating into fees. Now look, I'm not saying there's some evil conspiracy where everyone's sitting around trying to keep poor people poor. But I'm saying that there's an entire economic system that profits from poverty, and it's designed in a way that makes it almost impossible to escape. Every business I just mentioned, they're all legal. They're all operating within the law. But the law is set up in a way that allows them to charge rates and fees that would be unconscionable in any other context. So what do you actually do with this information? Here's the thing. If you're currently stuck in this cycle, the advice of just stop being poor is useless. But there are some tactical things that can help. First, if you're paying overdraft fees regularly, call your bank and ask them to turn off overdraft protection. It sounds counterintuitive, but overdraft protection is actually what allows them to charge you $35 for that $3 overage. If you turn it off, your card just gets declined, which is embarrassing but free. Second, if you're using payday loans, look into alternatives. Some credit unions offer small dollar loans with way better terms. Some employers offer early wage access programs that let you get paid before payday without the insane fees. Apps like Earnin or Dave let you access your paycheck early, and while they're not perfect, they're way better than a 400% APR. Third, if you can, even if it's just $5 or $10 a paycheck, try to build some kind of buffer. I know that sounds impossible when you're broke. But even $50 sitting in an account can be the difference between getting hit with an overdraft fee or not. The goal isn't to save your way to wealth. The goal is to create just enough cushion that you stop hemorrhaging money on fees. And fourth, advocate for change. This isn't just a personal finance problem. It's a policy problem. States that have cracked down on payday lending have seen people's financial situations improve dramatically. Cities that have invested in public banking options have given people alternatives to predatory lenders. This stuff matters, and it's worth pushing for. Here's what I want you to understand. If you're broke and you feel like you're working as hard as you possibly can but you're still not getting ahead, it's not because you're bad with money. It's because the system is designed to extract wealth from people who don't have it. And recognizing that is the first step to fighting back against it. You can make all the right decisions and still get screwed by overdraft fees and payday loans and poverty premiums. But understanding the game means you can start finding ways around it. If this video made you think differently about poverty and the cost of being broke, hit that like button and subscribe because we're going to keep talking about the financial systems that nobody else wants to acknowledge. And if you want more videos on how to navigate predatory financial systems, how to avoid these traps, and how to actually build wealth even when you're starting from nothing, I've got more content coming. I'll see you in the next one.